Hello, America. Welcome. It's Erick Erickson here. I sure hope you're doing well. The phone number is 877-973-7425. We begin with breaking news that is happening at Fort Stewart, which is near Savannah, Georgia. There appears to be an active shooter present. There are a number of media outlets now. Liberty County schools have been placed on a lockdown. This is outside of Savannah, Georgia. Major Charles Egan confirms an active shooter is present at Fort Stewart in Georgia. Casualties are being assessed. We do not have a lot of information right now. This is happening. We will keep an eye on the story. CNN is now reporting there are casualties at the military installation. Just for those of you who are familiar with the state of Georgia, you go to Savannah, and in the southwest of Savannah is Fort Stewart. It's a very large military installation there, and we'll keep an eye on the story to just bring you the latest, whatever we can there. Now, I gotta move into what's happening in Washington D.C. while we have this breaking news story there. Big Balls turns out to be the hero that we needed in this country. The media mocked the kid for his online username. His name is actually Edward Corristine. Edward Corristine is who you and I know and endearingly love. His name is Big Balls. He is the Doge staffer who the media said was discredited because of his age. He shouldn't do what he wanted. He has now left Doge, apparently, still in Washington, D.C., and overnight saw a young woman being harassed and attacked by a group of youths in Washington, D.C., and he intervened to help the woman, and he was beaten to a bloody pulp, but got those guys off the girl. He took their fists. He was beaten. His face was bloodied. His body was bloodied, but he protected the girl. You don't hear about these stories very often. In New York City, for example, you always see these people getting harassed and passersby passing by not doing anything, not their place. They don't want to get involved. Big Balls decided to get involved to save someone. You know, Washington, D.C. has the fourth highest homicide rate in the United States. Now, here's what's interesting to me, and I don't think it's a coincidence at all. You know what the big story is this morning in a lot of the major press? That crime is down, according to the FBI. In 2024, crime was actually down nationwide. Murders are down, robberies are down, break-ins are down, assaults are down, rapes are down. It's all down. It's all down. Yeah, but in Washington, D.C., the murder rate is the fourth highest in the U.S. And I have plenty of friends in Washington, D.C. who still don't feel safe at night in their neighborhoods. But because Donald Trump is president, God forbid we actually handle what's going on. The media wants you to know 2024, Joe Biden was president. Crime came down. I think that is an unfortunate way to spin this, in large part because people still don't feel safe in a lot of parts of the country right now, in particularly urban areas. It's one reason the president is pushing for homelessness to be taken off the streets and to get people off the streets, out of urban corridors where, I mean, all the time now you see people just piled in to parts of communities. You see the tent villages everywhere in the country right now, where people just are piled in, homeless people harassing people walking down the street. It still doesn't feel safe when you're getting harassed by homeless people. And now you've got this situation in Washington, D.C. This happens at night. And by the way, I should say, and like I tell parents whose kids are moving to urban areas to go to school, to go to college, like in the daytime, you're generally fine. There are areas everybody knows where you should avoid. The problem is that in a lot of cities now, it's like the downtown areas at night are not safe. It hurts the local businesses. It hurts the tourist industry. It hurts the locals who want to go downtown to have dinner. You know, I did my event at the Fox, which, by the way, I guess I should tell you, we did the Not Safe for Radio show. We're actually in talks about doing another one because it sold out so quick. A lot of people couldn't come, and when we surveyed the audience, a massive number of people said they just didn't feel like they wanted to go to Midtown Atlanta on a Saturday night with so much other stuff going on. Could we find a venue north of Atlanta? So we're finding a venue north of Atlanta. Stay tuned for details. We'll make that open probably around Christmas time. It'll be a good stocking stuffer for you guys. But it's a problem. It is a problem. And you know, I think the trotting out the crime statistics to say, well, crime is down. Pay no attention to what happened to big balls. Crime is down. I think it's the same thing of, well, speaking of big balls, they're throwing more sex toys on the floor of the WNBA. This time, a athlete, do I use the term loosely or not for the WNBA, got hit by a flying sex toy. It came from the crowd. It was another green one. Those of you who had in the betting pool green, it's another one. This is inappropriate behavior, I should say. You're disrupting. We should be discouraging flying sex toys at WNBA. But part of me is starting to wonder, now that people have kind of moved on from Caitlin Clark, is this actually a conspiracy within the WNBA to get us talking about the WNBA? Because people are talking about the WNBA again after the Shane Gillis stuff, after he exposed all these posers for not even knowing who the WNBA players are. Suddenly we're talking about the WNBA again because we got flying sex toys flying across the courts, hitting the athletes in the faces. I need you to understand. I promise you, it was not my intention to start the show today with flying sex toys and big balls. It was not. That just happens to be the news of the day. And your host abhors the red meat talking points, conservative talk radio, where you know exactly what the subject is going to be and what I'm going to say because of the side I'm on. I would much rather cover the news of the day. And sadly for you, and sadly for me, the headlines of the day are big balls and flying sex toys at WNBA shows. And now this news we are waiting to find out more about, an active shooter at Fort Stewart, Georgia. This is the preeminent headline, but we have no knowledge of what's going on there yet. So instead, we talk about this other, and I really internally, I'm developing part of a conspiracy theory here that these people are doing this at the WNBA to get attention. That is my that is my suspicion, although I don't know for sure. Sophie Cunningham, the athlete, said to stop throwing these on the court. You're going to hurt one of us. Someone replied, "Stop playing basketball on the flying sex toy range." I'm sorry. I realize, and some of you probably have kids. My sincere apologies to you. This is actually happening. Look, I look up and here's ESPN. They're talking about this very subject on the TV. Y'all, we need to move on to other stuff, obviously, because there is other stuff. Apple is going to Washington D.C. today. Apple Computers, Tim Cook, the CEO, is going to Washington D.C. today. He's going to announce at the White House later today $100 billion in new investment in the United States of America. That news is supposed to come here in a little bit, and we should get some sense of what it's going to be. I'd like to take the press conference, assuming it's going to happen during the show. I'll carry it live. We're also waiting to hear if Governor Abbott is going to be able to get on the show. They're having all sorts of issues getting him. He's been tied up with the lawyers trying to figure out how to the Texas Democratic response. By the way, there's other breaking news happening right now. Someone has called in a bomb threat to the hotel in Chicago where the Democrats are staying. We'll cover that news as we get to it. Donald Trump is threatening a federal takeover of Washington, D.C. after the attack on Edward Costandine, the big balls. He and Elon Musk are back on the same page over federalization of D.C. I personally favor federalization of Washington, D.C. And this is not something new. I have some friends, some of whom are Democrat, not all of them, but they're very big partisan proponents of self-governance in Washington, D.C. If I had my way, we would revoke, what is it, the 23rd Amendment that gives D.C. the right to vote in the Electoral College? And we would take away the right to vote in Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C., by the design of our founders, is supposed to be a federal zone for the United States Congress. We should disincentivize people from being there who aren't part of the federal project or working in the private sector to meet the needs of those in the federal project. We should not give them statehood, and we certainly should not give them the right of self-governance because they are to be there at the service of the federal government. That is the purpose of the District of Columbia. And I have friends who very vehemently disagree with me on this, and I'm just telling you what I think. I think D.C. should be federalized. I think the United States Congress itself should oversee the District of Columbia. And I think that the District of Columbia has frankly lost credibility in its effort to govern itself, given the crime in Washington, D.C., given the corruption in Washington, D.C. You know, one of the things that they've done in Washington to raise money? They've put speed cameras at the borders of the District of Columbia so that people who work in the District of Columbia but live in Virginia or Maryland, when they leave the city, they get speeding tickets unless they're going real slow, because in many places they even lower the speed limit in those areas. So you're doing 55 and suddenly you're in a 25, and they put a speed camera there waiting to nab you so that Washington, D.C. can fund itself based on the people who are working in Washington, D.C. and not living in Washington, D.C., because you're not going to get voter backlash. Much of what the city government does in Washington, D.C. is corrupt, and it has the fourth highest murder rate in the nation. I'm old enough to remember last year when a member of Congress was attacked in an elevator. She had to throw scalding hot coffee in the face of her attacker. And now you've got Edward Corstein, who tried to help a lady in Washington, D.C. By the way, a 15-year-old boy and girl from Maryland, and charged them with unarmed carjacking. The suspects are being held in the D.C. Youth Detention Center. The attack is the latest seemingly random assault on a federal staffer in Washington, intensifying scrutiny of the nation's capital from Congress and the White House. In June, 21-year-old congressional intern Erick Erickson was killed in crossfire near the district's convention center. He was a rising senior at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He worked for Republican Representative Ron Estes in Kansas. No one has been charged in his death. Year-to-date, violent crime is down 26% of the district compared with 2024, according to D.C., but does that even matter when it's still the fourth highest crime in the nation, the fourth highest murder rate in the nation? It shouldn't matter. Washington, D.C. should be controlled by the federal government. It is there in the Constitution for the federal government. I want to commend this guy. We've joked about his online name. The media tried to vilify him for his online name. But you know you've seen it too. You see the videos in New York City where the homeless man set the woman on ablaze in the subway, killing her. You've seen the people attacking Jews in the street in New York City, and passerbyers just walk by. This kid saw someone in trouble and went to assist them. Would you? He did. The press wanted to excoriate him for being part of Doge. This is a kid whose character should be an example for other people. Good for him. And if this is the incentive for the president to decide that it's time for Washington to be taken back over by the feds, so be it. Something needs to happen in Washington, D.C. Now, before I step out, I do need to bring you up to, we've got some press reports coming in that we do have confirmed casualties, according to both Fox News and CNN, at Fort Stewart in Georgia. We do not yet know the nature of the shooter, if the shooter has been apprehended or is down. We don't know any motivation, of course. Right now, this is still an active situation. I will keep you up to date through the show as this story develops in Fort Stewart, Georgia, near Savannah, with an active shooter on the base.
Have something to say? Hello. Call the show.